But like I say, I think Julius Randle's game is really...
Here's Lester Holt.
Good day. We're coming on the air with breaking news. The Las Vegas Police Department set to hold a news conference momentarily about the Tesla Cybertruck that exploded outside a Trump hotel yesterday in Las Vegas. NBC News has learned that the driver of that truck who was killed in the explosion was an active member of the U.S. Army Special Forces. His name, Matthew Alan Livelsberger. He was the only person killed in the blast while others were injured. Earlier today, the FBI in New Orleans said they do not at this time see any definitive link between the deadly attack on Bourbon Street there and the explosion in Las Vegas. But there are still many questions about the motive behind this explosion. Let's go to the news conference now, just getting underway in Las Vegas with the Sheriff Kevin McMahon speaking.
Through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about his identity and what we believe. But I would like to highlight a couple of things that the teams found inside of the Cybertruck that are useful to the investigation. And that, first and foremost, is a military identification. We also found a passport. We found a Desert Eagle 50 caliber semi-automatic pistol. And if you'll notice on a lot of these guns that we're going to talk about here, they're almost just burnt beyond recognition as well. There's a SLR model B30 semi-automatic firearm, number of fireworks that were still in the vehicle that had to be removed. Notably, we found an iPhone and a smartwatch, and then several credit cards were also in the name of our subject. Our subject is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He's of Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd of 1987. Now, as you'll see here on a picture of his driver's license, let's see, the question really still remains for me, and I know that there's a lot of you folks in the media that are identifying this person as the person in our vehicle. As I mentioned to you already, his body is burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that that is the individual that was inside of our vehicle. And so as I'm calling it now, the subject or person of interest, I will not come back until I have the confirmation through DNA or medical records that this is indeed, in fact, the subject inside of the vehicle. Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle. Obviously, in how we're trying to identify him, and I'm feeling comfortable to give you this information, is a tremendous amount of substantial evidence to include he rented the Turo vehicle. There are 2 tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm, that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to what it is that we now know he had on his body. That has given us a lot of confidence that this is, in fact, the same person. As well as, the clearly obvious, which is the credit cards, the military identification, the passport. And then furthermore, as you'll see here in just a very short period of time, we tracked his movements from Colorado to Las Vegas, and in a number of the photographs that we were able to determine, he was the individual that was driving the vehicle. And also, I'd like to iterate this point to you. We still have only ever seen him in this vehicle, and we're not aware of any other subjects involved in this particular case. Now, I would like to acknowledge a couple of things because I know what's going on in the social media world, and there are a number of things in this case that are similar to the attack in New Orleans. We do know that our subject here served in the military. In fact, he's a current member of the military. Both of the subjects served at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. What we do know about that is it's a very large military base, and we have no record that they served in the same unit or even at the same years at Fort Bragg, something that continues to remain under investigation. I also know that they both served in Afghanistan in 2009. We don't have any evidence that they were in the same province in Afghanistan, the same location, or the same unit. Again, something else that remains under investigation. And we also know, of course, that they both used the rental company Turo to rent their vehicles. As far as his military background, it's been confirmed by DOD that he was indeed in the United States Army. He was also a Green Beret operations sergeant who spent most of his time at Fort Carson, Colorado, and in Germany. He was on approved leave from Germany, where he was serving with the 10th Special Forces Group. He was also previously in the National Guard and the Army Reserve. I'd like to point out to you that through exceptional joint investigative effort, we've gotten to a place where we believe we can show you his route to Las Vegas from Colorado, and Carlos will put up the map there for you. And we know that he rented the Cybertruck in Denver on December 28th. We tracked his movements through the Tesla charging stations to Monument, Colorado on December 30th. On the 31st of December, the truck was charged in Trinidad, Colorado, Las Vegas, New Mexico, and Albuquerque and Gallup, New Mexico. On January 1st, the truck was charged in Holbrook, Flagstaff, and Kingman, Arizona. We last tracked the truck in Kingman at 05:33 yesterday morning. The truck was first spotted in Las Vegas at 7:29 a.m. yesterday. And Carlos will pull up a picture of the truck pulling onto Fashion Show Drive here. And that picture was observed at about 7:34 a.m. We know that he pulled into the Trump Valet, and I believe we have a video of that. You can see the Cybertruck highlighted there. So through extensive surveillance video, we were able to track him leaving there, and we know that he went to several different places along Las Vegas Boulevard, and he spent some time in a parking lot of a business near Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. We didn't have a video of the truck pulling back onto Las Vegas Boulevard from the sands. See that there? That's north on the boulevard from Sands at 8:39, where he then immediately heads to the Trump Hotel, pulls into the valet area, and as of course you all know, the explosion occurs within 17 seconds of his arrival at the valet. There's some additional investigative updates that are going to be provided to you by a couple of the other speakers here, the first of which will be our special agent in charge of the FBI local office, Spencer Evans. Spencer?
Good morning. My name is Spencer Evans. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas division. As the sheriff mentioned, we've been working through the night with our partners, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and other agencies, to gather all the facts and determine a motive to what was initially reported to the FBI as a bombing incident, to which our special agent bomb techs and others responded. Obviously, we're always concerned in these sorts of events to ascertain what the motive is. We understand that's everybody's at the forefront of everyone's thoughts. And so looking into exactly what the motivation is remains our number one priority. This is why the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force has been brought into play. The Joint Terrorism Task Force, most important part of that acronym is joint. It is done in concert with our partners, which are comprised of more than a dozen investigative agencies here throughout the state of Nevada. We've been working hand in glove, side by side, tirelessly to determine, is there any ongoing threat to the public, to identify the subject, to determine any potential connection to other events going on in the world, most notably in New Orleans, and then obviously to determine if there's anything else that we need to be tracking down. At this time, as the sheriff's pointed out, we feel that the subject has been identified, although not conclusively, waiting for DNA evidence on that front. However, we do feel like we have the subject identified, and at this time there is no information about additional subjects that the FBI is tracking on. Our resources, as I mentioned, that have been deployed in support of this event include Special Agent Bomb Techs, our evidence response team, which is processing crime scenes, side by side with the forensics folks from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, our investigators, our intelligence analysts, and then outside of the FBI Las Vegas field office, we have investigative leads that are being conducted by FBI field offices, both internationally and domestically as well. As always, when the FBI is involved with any sort of case like this, we ask for help for the public. Anyone with information related to this incident, we encourage you to please call 1-800-CALL-FBI, or you can submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. We've already received thousands of tips related to this incident. The challenge that we face moving forward is to separate those that are pertinent and relevant and those that can be verified for those from those that have not. For example, one of the tips that we received just today relates to information alluding to this subject's personal experiences related to his time and activity in the military. Again, that's unverified and uncorroborated, but one of many tips and leads that we will be following up in the days that come. If you have any additional information, again, encourage everyone, 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit it online, tips.fbi.gov. We will tirelessly work to exhaust all investigative leads and conclusively determine what the nature of this particular incident was, what the motivation was, and to the extent possible, share all that information as we obtain it. I'll now turn some time over to the Assistant Special Agent in charge from the ATF, Kenny Cooper.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kenny Cooper. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of ATF San Francisco Field Division. ATF is bringing our expertise in post-blast investigations and our crime gun intelligence to specifically assist in this investigation. I will tell you that our Special Agent Bomb Techs are working with FBI and with Las Vegas Metro and sifting through that post-blast debris to find components and investigative leads that will derive from that evidence process. We're too early into that investigation process to give any determination as far as how this device was initiated. I will say that we do know that the components primarily consist of fireworks, mortars, aerial shells, and are all consumer fireworks. Nothing commercial grade has been discovered at this point, and we've identified some fuel enhancers like the Coleman fuel and VP Racing fuel and some explosive targets that can be purchased at any sporting goods store. We've also, as the sheriff mentioned, we've identified 2 semi-automatic handguns recovered from the Tesla. We have successfully traced those firearms, and I can tell you that Matthew Livelsberger lawfully purchased both of these firearms on December 30th, 2024. We have agents following up those investigative leads. We know exactly where those firearms were purchased, and we will share any developments from those leads as they come in. Thank you.
We also have the Clark County Fire Chief here, John Steinbeck, and he didn't have any additional updates, but if there's any questions in regards to what the fire department did during this, he's here to answer those questions as well. With that, I'd just like to say before I take a couple questions from all of you, you'll notice that we're not releasing information that we haven't corroborated and verified. We're very well aware of all of the things that are going around on social media. But that's just the way we're going to conduct this investigation. We're not putting it out until we can tell you for a fact what information it is that we're putting out. And so we're going to continue to do that, but I'm also confident to tell the Las Vegas community and this great nation that we don't believe there's any further threat from this subject or anybody associated to him here in Las Vegas. With that, Denise, I saw you had your hand up. If you could just identify yourself, please.
Did this suspect have any other connections to Las Vegas? Had he ever been here before, or any reason to be here?
So the question was, did the subject have any ties to Las Vegas, or had he ever been here before? I do believe we had one instance a number of years ago where he stayed at a local hotel, but we're still trying to verify that information as well. Sir?
The David Charles, KLAS TV. There was, you have a gentleman in a Cybertruck Trump Hotel. there's information that the FBI was in Colorado Springs last night, possibly at this gentleman's home. Any information about why?
I think I'll let Spencer answer that question.
So as I mentioned, the motivation at this point is unknown. We are, as I mentioned earlier, following investigative leads both domestically and internationally as well. And so that includes search warrants and witness interviews, collecting forensic information, and basically trying to compile the facts. And so there's investigative activity taking place literally around the globe, trying to determine what the potential nexus is. But at this time, at this particular moment in time, as the sheriff aptly said, we have to focus on what we know and what we don't know. We know we have a bombing, absolutely. And it's a bombing that certainly has factors that raise concern. It's not lost on us that it's in front of, of the Trump building, that it's a Tesla vehicle, but we don't have information at this point that definitively tells us or suggests it was because of this particular ideology or any of the reasoning behind it. That's the purpose of the investigation that we're conducting, is to get to the bottom of exactly what happened, why and how.
Sir.
Tim Caputo with KBC in Los Angeles. You mentioned a number of similarities between this case and one in New Orleans. How far in the investigation process do you guys go to try to rule out that they are connected, knowing that you already have a couple things that seem to connect them together?
So the question is how are we working to rule in or rule out any connections to the New Orleans event? And the answer to that is every tip and lead that comes in, every piece of evidence that comes in, we don't discount it, we work it through it. It's a interesting thing during these kinds of investigations that if these turned out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have. And so we're not prepared to rule in or rule out anything at this point. There's lots more for us to do in this investigation. We haven't even gotten into the phones or the computers, which are usually very, very instructive and informative to us as we investigate. And we've got a lot more work to do to trace him, to see the stores that he went to rule out anybody else. Lots and lots of investigative work to do. And we're just trying to give you an update on what we know now. That is factual.
Was the gunshot wound to his head self-inflicted?
We believe the question was the gunshot self-inflicted, and we do believe it was, since he was the only person in the vehicle, and it occurred immediately prior to the vehicle blowing up. Back there, sir?
Yes, sir. Morgan Chesky, ABC News. With the evidence you've seen so far, are you comfortable now calling this a suicide mission?
The question is, am I comfortable calling it a suicide mission? I'm comfortable calling it a suicide with the bombing that occurred immediately thereafter. I'm not giving it any other labels.
And with the friends and family you've spoken to so far, have they shared any prior red flags?
The question is, did we have any of the family members share any particular red flags? Again, I'll go back to what I know is circulating on social media, but none of that has been verified at this point.
And final question real quickly. All the components you found inside the Cybertruck, were they all purchased in Colorado?
The question is, were all the components found inside of the Cybertruck purchased in Colorado? And I don't know the answer to that. That's part of why we're doing the extensive part of the investigation.
Associated Press, can you talk a little bit about the security measures you have in place at the hotel now?
So, as you all know, we had just successfully completed a New Year's Eve event where hundreds of thousands of people come to Las Vegas. I've extended our posture just like it is for a New Year's Eve event, where I have thousands of police officers that are working day in and day out. Obviously, dozens and dozens of people that are working on this investigation as well. We'll continue to look at what that security posture looks like, but I'm confident in the safety of our community as we move forward. Go ahead in the middle there.
Channel 13 here in Las Vegas, ABC. Did Livelsberger have any sort of criminal record at all? Also, do you know when that Turo vehicle was rented?
The question was, is there any criminal record? None that I'm aware of. That has not been brought to my attention that he had a criminal record. And I said that the Cybertruck was rented on December 28th in Denver, Colorado. Right here. Hi.
Have you guys been able to verify that he checked into the Resort World Hotel the day before this?
The question is, do we know if he checked into the Resorts World the day before this? I'm not aware of that information. Sir?
Mike Allen, Fox 5 Vegas. You mentioned increased security presence at the Trump International. Is going to extend further along the strip, or is it just there? And how long do you anticipate that?
The question is generally about the security posture, and that's entirely our entire community, not only Fremont Street and the Strip, but surrounding neighborhoods as well, just to make sure that we have the community feeling that level of safety that they need to feel after an event such as this. Right next to you there.
Katie from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. How exactly were you guys able to use the charging stations to track the cars for you?
The question is, how were we able to use the charging stations to track the vehicle all the way through? And I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question just yet. I know that there's some capability by being able to determine that the car is connected to the charger. One of the things that we're looking for is anybody that may have been at the charging location at the same time. We're looking to try to identify them because their vehicles would have also had cameras that would have taped anybody in and around them. We're trying to get people that may have been in the same locations at the same time that have video on their vehicle that could provide that video to us as well. I'll take two more. Go ahead.
Again, can you talk about the damage being contained by the Cybertruck itself, and do you think that plays into whether he was aiming to hurt others or was it a public suicide?
Yeah, the question is about the Cybertruck and the lack of damage to the Cybertruck and containing the explosion. Carlos, if you could put that truck back up there, it might be helpful, but you'll see if you look on the outside of that vehicle, it's hard to tell from that photograph, but other than the windows being gone, that's a bit more disassembled than it was at the scene, and the back area being blown off. There's no evidence of physical damage to the sides of that vehicle, and so the explosion that was in that vehicle sort of vented out and up, but it didn't even damage the glass doors at the Trump. So I'm not sure what that means. I also know that there's a number of unexploded pieces of the things that he had inside of that vehicle, and so I just don't think that it was done as well as he was expecting it to be done. But go ahead.
Sofia Rodriguez with Univision Vegas. I was wondering, were you able to recover the video from the Cybertruck, or was that destructive?
So the question is, are we able to recover the video from the Cybertruck? And many of you may know that those Cybertrucks contain a tremendous number of cameras. Again, Mr. Musk has sent out a number of his folks that will be arriving here this afternoon with the intent to try to capture the part of that captured all of the video from inside of the truck. Sir?
Just quickly, you had mentioned a number of the components in the back of the truck that did not go off. Maybe this is a better suited question for ATF, but when it comes to the rudimentary nature of the bomb, I think we mostly think of a bomb that is connected. This seems like individual kind of incendiary and combustible components put together. Can you speak to how you think this is a bomb, or was it just several pieces of things that might blow off and might explode that were just lit and gone off at the same time?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it does appear that it was. I just want to be careful with my language here, but the level of sophistication is not what we would expect from an individual with this type of military experience. That most of the materials inside that Tesla were fuel to help fuel a greater explosion. But it's too early to answer any question is if there was sophisticated connectivity to those components to make it ignite in the way that it did.
All right, there was one last hand over here. I'll take your last question.
Or maybe this is for Special Agent Evans, Mike Carter, Newsmax. Any idea if the suspect has been in touch with any outside terrorist groups? Has this investigation extended globally?
The question is, do we know whether the subject's been in touch with any outside terrorist groups or if it's been investigated globally? And Spencer, you want me to? Okay.
So the question about whether it's being investigated globally, absolutely. Like I said, we're running down investigative leads around the world. No information that we're aware of right now that connects this individual to any terrorist organization around the world. But that's obviously the thrust of the investigation, is ruling out that there's any sort of terrorism nexus, and then again getting at what the ideology is.
We appreciate you all coming, and we will be back before you when there's substantial updates to provide to you. Thanks for all your great work.
All right. right, if you're just joining us, this has been a news conference to discuss what happened yesterday in Las Vegas, Nevada, involving the explosion, the bombing of a Tesla Cyber vehicle outside the Trump International Hotel there. A substantial amount of information just released in this news conference about the bomber in this case, what they've learned about his movements. I want to go to NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. Tom, a lot to sift through here.
I would say so, Lester. So the update there from Sheriff Kevin McMahill of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department makes it clear that the individual who we identified earlier today is the person who rented the vehicle, and then the individual we identified is the person who's believed to be dead inside of it. That was confirmed by the sheriff. That person is Matthew Alan Livelsberger. He gave a date of birth of 7/22/1987, so it makes him 37 years old. We have some new information as far as what was found in the car. 2 semi-automatic pistols, which were apparently purchased approximately a week before this occurred. A Desert Eagle 50 caliber pistol, an SLR B30 semi-automatic pistol. Again, all that coming from the sheriff. Inside the car, they were able to find, according to some images we saw there at the press conference, his identifications, including a military identification. And then he also has a number of tattoos, which apparently some of those tattoos are still intact. According to the sheriff, the body was quite significantly burned as a result of this incendiary device that he put together, this explosive that went off. And so that's something that's a bit of a challenge, and that's why they're not saying definitively that this occurred. Our colleague Morgan Chesky asked about the idea of whether or not this was a suicide bomber. This person was on a mission. Sheriff doesn't want to go that far so far because they're still working on a motive, according to him and the FBI special agent in charge. They don't want to call it that. They're saying that apparently Livelsberger took his own life, and then there was this bombing and explosion that occurred after that. According to the coroner, apparently they found a gunshot wound to him that occurred prior to the bombing, and then a handgun at his feet. They tracked his travels,
All right, Tom, thanks very much. That wraps up this special report.
Hey, Gotti, let's put this game into context. The Sugar Bowl being played here today into tonight, it is something that is under scrutiny both for what has happened and what could happen, because this is also the site of the Super Bowl next month. And after the security failures of New Year's Day on Bourbon Street, this event under that much more of a microscope. And so what I can tell you, having gone in there to watch some of this game and see what the experience was like, let me tell you a couple things I noticed. First of all, when I actually went through the metal detector area where they would do a bag check and all of that at any major sporting event these days, I did not notice anything that stuck out, felt different, and in fact, I got through in a matter of seconds. So, of course, we don't know if that had anything to do with staffing, if that had anything to do with the flow of, more available entrances, anything like that, but just that was an interesting introduction as we made our way inside. As you're approaching down the street, you see armored police vehicles, you see law enforcement teams with long guns. Very clearly, very visibly, a show of force from authorities here. But once I was inside, largely it looked like and felt like a normal game. If you had brought someone to the game who had not had any knowledge of the events here over the last 48 hours, and you dropped them right in their seat in the middle of the game, they may not realize at all that something was different in this city this week. They had a moment of silence. It was well before the crowd was reaching capacity. It was close to around 30 minutes before the actual kickoff. The stadium was probably only around 60% capacity ballpark at that point. So after that, it just felt like you were at a big college football game. For better or worse, that's just what it looked like in there. But I can tell you, walking around on the concourses, I saw an FBI SWAT team in camouflage. I saw DHS, Department of Homeland Security, police. So there were law enforcement, federal law enforcement personnel on the concourse. And that just speaks again to this visible heightened sense of security here in light of everything that's happened. And just again, Gotti, to bring it full circle, we're talking about a venue that was not just under scrutiny for this event after what happened on New Year's Day, but this is the venue for the Super Bowl next month, a global event and something that is always a high security priority, and that much more under a spotlight because of what's happened here this week. Thankfully, this game began without any incident here. Best we can tell. Of course, we might hear of some arrest or something like that later on, but it felt like a normal game when we went inside. Gotti?
Tonight, car rental app Turo under new scrutiny.
Oh my God.
After authorities say it was used in connection with the deadly terror attack in New Orleans and the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. The peer-to-peer rental app is similar to Airbnb, allowing users to rent a vehicle directly from an owner rather than a car rental company.
You could get the keys to vacation success.
Users can meet car owners in person to pick up the ride or organize a remote handoff in which renters unlock the car using a lockbox code or the app.
Why do you think someone would seek out an app like Turo over more traditional companies like, say, a Hertz?
I think it makes it a little bit more anonymous. So when you go to a place like Hertz or Avis or Budget, one, you're probably in an airport. There are going to be a ton of cameras around. Everybody is going to see you. They have access to data streams that maybe an app like Turo does not.
Turo confirming its platform was used to rent the Ford pickup truck that plowed through New Orleans' Bourbon Street early Wednesday morning, and the Tesla Cybertruck that was filled with explosives outside Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Authorities say right now there is no definitive link between the two incidents.
There is going to be a lot of scrutiny on whether or not they are doing best practices relative to their industry peers. Are they doing enough background checks? Are they providing enough safeguards? Because a question will be, what is their responsibility and how far did they deviate from that?
In a statement, a Turo spokesperson saying in part, "We do not believe that either renter involved in the Las Vegas and New Orleans attacks had a criminal background that would have identified them as a security threat. We remain committed to maintaining the highest standards in risk management." Turo has approximately 150,000 active hosts worldwide, with 350,000 active vehicle listings and 3.5 million active guests. Turo's website says Turo screens users when they create an account and again when they book a car. After that, screenings can be triggered for several reasons and may prompt Turo to deny users access to a car or app. However, Turo says it cannot reveal information about its screening process, other than that it involves a renter uploading their driver's license.
Certainly you can trace these things down. But again, with the adapting technology, we're foolish to think that the criminals and terrorists are not going to adapt. In fact, they may actually out-innovate law enforcement, which is what really makes it difficult.
Tom, rental cars being used in ramming attacks is not unheard of. According to one analysis from San Jose State University, 5% of 184 vehicle ramming incidents from 1970 to 2018 used rented cars. But these two recent incidents with Turo raising concerns that more could follow, Tom.
Are they up? On this first day of the year, dozens of people chose to start 2025 at Constellation Park in West Seattle.
Oh, yeah, here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Hoping to catch a glimpse of our coast's beloved creatures.
Wow, they're so close to the shore over there.
Tragic news of J61's death and the confirmation of the birth of another J-Pod baby make whale lovers like Kirsty Moole
Today's the day.
Especially protective. Moole was among the few who called the Be Whale Wise hotline to report a yacht that seemed to be cruising too close and too long with the pod visible from the park.
We just lost a calf, and vessel disturbance is, one of the top 3 things that they...
Good evening, Lester. Well, the FBI has now given Bourbon Street back to the city of New Orleans, which has reopened, as you mentioned, but it looks much different. They've now added this hydraulic steel ramp, which will prevent vehicles from getting onto Bourbon Street. They've also added these barriers to the sidewalk. Remember, the terrorists jumped the curb and came through the sidewalk onto Bourbon Street. If these precautions were in place on New Year's Eve, that terrorist likely would not have gotten access. All of this as a makeshift memorial is now being put up here on Bourbon Street as the city insists it is safe for residents and for visitors.
Tonight, this new video showing the high-speed terror attack in the early hours of New Year's Day.
We got a white Ford. I need EMS. I can now in Bourbon now.
People celebrating on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, scrambling to dodge that white pickup truck the FBI says was driven by 42-year-old Texas-born Shamsuddin Jabbar. He died after crashing into a crane and getting into a shootout with police. This photo showing the truck and a black wheelchair belonging to Jeremy Senke, who was knocked to the ground.
Cops are looking at me, and I know at this time that they were looking at me because I was still alive, and they knew I was still alive. So I'm screaming, and finally somebody came over to me and just looked at me and said, "Listen, we know you're hurt, but you're alive." That's what they said to me, "You're alive."
But his legs were broken, and tonight he's still in shock over the killings.
I'm not against anybody like that. I love everybody. I love everybody, and I just can't believe that would happen.
14 people killed in the attack, dozens more injured and hospitalized. University Medical Center, New Orleans, treating the most critically wounded.
We had a mix of both blunt and penetrating trauma. We had patients that were injured from the vehicle going down the street, as well as some with gunshot injuries.
Authorities now searching Jabbar's Houston home, as well as a residence where he stayed in New Orleans, locating 3 cell phones and 2 laptops. And tonight, piecing together more information about the man who had an ISIS flag on the truck he used in the attack. We now know he was an Army veteran who at one point deployed to Afghanistan, worked as a realtor, property manager, and beginning in 2021, an employee at financial consulting firm Deloitte. But also, more recently, someone who posted videos expressing his desire to kill and his inspiration from ISIS. 5 videos the FBI says posted to Facebook in the moments before his deadly rampage.
In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers.
In this YouTube video posted 4 years ago, Jabbar is seen promoting himself as a trustworthy real estate agent because of his time in the military.
I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service.
But he appeared to be struggling financially, going through a divorce several years ago. According to public records obtained by NBC News, he lost $28,000 with his business in 2021, owed $16,000 in credit card debt, and wrote to a divorce lawyer in 2022 saying, "I cannot afford the house payment. It is past due in excess of $27,000 and in danger of foreclosure if we delay settling the divorce." According to family members who spoke to the New York Times, Jabbar was raised Christian but converted to Islam and recently had been barred by his ex-wife from spending time with their 2 daughters after acting erratically. The FBI says Jabbar claimed to have joined ISIS before the summer of 2024.
This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act.
The FBI, which initially said it did not believe Jabbar was solely responsible for the Bourbon Street attack, now says he appears to have acted alone, renting the pickup truck on December 30th and driving from Texas to New Orleans on the 31st.
We do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack is involved in this attack except for Shamsuddin Jabbar.
According to the FBI, Jabbar also placed 2 explosive devices in coolers near the scene of the attack, one at the cross-section of Bourbon and Orleans Street, the other at an intersection 2 blocks away. 2 senior law enforcement officials say both devices contained nails inside of them and had receivers for remote detonation.
We did obtain surveillance footage showing Jabbar placing the devices where they were found.
And authorities are investigating a fire at the New Orleans house where Jabbar is believed to have stayed, saying it started after Jabbar was killed. Its cause unclear.
She was a loving, caring person. She loved her son.
Jessica Carvajal now among those in mourning. Her sister, Nicole Perez, killed in the attack. She leaves behind a 5-year-old boy named Melvin.
Do you remember the last thing you guys said to each other by any chance?
She texted me at 12 o'clock at night telling me, "Happy New Year, sis. I love you so much." And I told her I love you too. And I didn't know that was going to be her last text message.
In New Orleans today, Bourbon Street reopened ahead of the Sugar Bowl. The college football game delayed a day because of the attack.
We have brought in heavy trucks.
The police superintendent assuring people her city and their iconic street are safe.
And Tom, there's some new images tonight related to the attack there on Bourbon Street. What can you tell us?
That's right, Lester. The FBI releasing tonight some chilling new images. They show the terrorist walking through Bourbon Street as he was planting those explosive devices. And we're also seeing for the first time the coolers that the terrorist was hiding those pipe bombs in. The FBI says they were filled with nails. If they would have exploded, likely several more people would have died. Lester?
All right, we've got some breaking news we're following as well. The FBI just moments ago releasing new video with an appeal for help from the public as it tries to solve one of the biggest mysteries around the January 6th attack on the Capitol. This is the video you're seeing here. A suspect placing one of the bombs near the Democratic National Committee headquarters in D.C. on January 5th, 2021. An explosive was also left at the RNC headquarters. They were real bombs, but they didn't go off. And it's not clear as to why. Something like 600 tips have come in, but so far nothing has led to a break in the case. The FBI still has no suspects and has not determined a motive. I want to bring in Ryan Riley to talk more about this. I was on the steps of the Capitol on January 6th. I remember the fallout from learning that there were these bombs that were found both near the RNC and DNC headquarters. And it's astounding to think that there is still no clarity as to who actually placed them there and what the motive and objective were. Walk us through this video now being released and where they are in this investigation.
Yeah, you know, given all of the news that we've seen elsewhere and all of these other FBI investigations, I think this actually comes at a really important time for informing Americans about just the basics of the FBI, because I think there's this Hollywood image of the FBI and then there's the reality of the FBI. And often that Hollywood image feeds a lot of the conspiracies that we see about what the FBI, because people really just overestimate, I think, their technological capabilities. Massive bureaucracies aren't known for being on the cutting edge of technology all the time. And I think that that's what you sort of got to recognize. With the January 6th case specifically, basically the failure here and what they haven't been able to determine is they haven't gotten a sharp enough image of the suspect's face, and he's very well covered. In fact, you know, some of the sleuths who have worked directly with the FBI and are in fact responsible for hundreds of the arrests that the FBI ultimately made have even went back and forth about whether or not this suspect was a male or a female, and they really, you know, they dove into this. They looked at the shoes. They're really good at following a lot of these leads. The FBI is also attempting to do that now as well. But, you know, I think this investigation, because of the span of the January 6th investigation, really kind of did not get necessarily all of the resources that it would have in a normal time.
I mean, at this point, what is the likelihood that they can solve this thing? And I say that because when you look at the images, and let's bring it up again, guys, if we can, the video of this individual placing these bombs, and then the other image as well of even the individual walking. It is almost impossible. I know they have obviously much more high-tech technology than we have in just watching it on our TV screens, but it's almost impossible to be able to identify these types of individuals. And if you're relying on the public to help out, the memory at this point for many people that may have seen this individual will likely not be very clear.
Yeah, I remember right after January 6th, they put out a request for Ring camera footage that was just outside of the retention request, right? So I think they got some footage, but there was definitely footage in the early days that was missed here. So, you know, I think there are a lot of, there was a report that came out even today from Congress, from Republicans in the House looking back at this. And they said that the FBI had identified several suspects that they looked into preliminarily. But I think you're spot on about that timing. Because if you imagine, even if they were able to identify somebody now, getting that over past the question of beyond a reasonable doubt is going to be tough, even, you know, given how much time has passed. Yes.
I mean, and listen, obviously, also with everything that has just happened over the last 24 hours here in this country at the start of 2025, you have the inauguration just 18 days away at this point, January 6th, a couple of days away as well, the anniversary of January 6th. This individual very much likely still out there. Ryan Riley, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the people that matter most right now, and that is the victims. The victims of yesterday's deadly attack. 27-year-old Martin Vesh Jr., nicknamed Tiger. Vesh is from Lafayette, Louisiana, graduated from Princeton University, where he played on the football team. Tiger had been living in New York City, working on Wall Street. He was on Bourbon Street with a friend when the attack happened. I want to bring in Tiger's father, Martin Vesh, and Jack Vesh, Tiger's brother, as well. Welcome to you both, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. I can't imagine what you are going through a day after losing your brother and your son. Martin, how are you doing?
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Well, as you can imagine, when you lose your oldest son, it's very difficult. But with Jack and his sisters and my wife and all of our extended family that are here with us, we had a vigil.
This begins with breaking news.
Tonight, new photos of the Bourbon Street attacker. The FBI just released these images. They show Shamsuddin Jabbar just an hour before he drove a truck along the crowded Bourbon Street, and they're asking for anyone with any information to call the tip line.
Meanwhile, we have live team coverage for you tonight as that famous street reopens to visitors. The Superdome opens to Sugar Bowl fans, and officials are working to learn more about what led to the attack. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm Katie Moore.
And I'm Sharice Gibson. It has been a very difficult start to the new year here in New Orleans. Earlier this afternoon, bars and restaurants along Bourbon Street reopened. Right now, the FBI is saying they do believe the suspect acted alone.
And we are learning more about those killed and injured in the attack. Our coverage begins tonight with Lily Cummings, who has more about what investigators are saying today. Lily?
Katie and Sharice, Bourbon Street is now open to pedestrians, and Canal Street, where I'm standing, is bustling. Just take a look behind me at the extra safety measures that have been put into place to keep folks safe. You can see a large armored vehicle. That is Homeland Security, and beyond them, you have JPSO directly blocking off Bourbon with a truck that they use during hurricanes, making a stronger barricade. Now, we were here this afternoon as Canal reopened. Cars were allowed to travel lake and riverbound starting around 2 p.m. 2 hours later, the Canal streetcar came back online. And then earlier today, the FBI gave big updates in their investigation. First, we learned that they now believe the suspect acted alone. We also found out that 2 explosive devices were found in the French Quarter in connection with this attack. Now, agents were able to disable them. After that press conference, NOPD Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick was on Canal. She shared they installed large metal blockades on Bourbon that prevent driving on the sidewalk. The chief was asked if she was upset that they weren't in place the night of the attack. Listen to her response.
It's not a matter of being upset. This is not a matter of pointing blame anywhere. A terrorist is hell-bent on destruction. This man was going to do his best. And if it hadn't been on Bourbon, he was going to go somewhere else.
Now, we also told you yesterday that investigators were looking for 4 suspects. They are no longer looking for those individuals. They told us that because there was footage going around that showed those folks looking at the coolers where they found some of those explosive devices. But the FBI said in that update today that these folks appear to just have been looking at those coolers, checking them out after they were placed. Reporting live from Canal Street, Lily Cummings, WWL Louisiana.
All right, an important distinction there. Thanks so much, Lily. Investigators are continuing to piece together evidence on the suspect who committed the attack, Shamsuddin Jabbar.
The FBI and local law enforcement says he's a U.S. citizen from Texas and an Army veteran who came to New Orleans looking to kill. Our chief investigative reporter, David Hammer, joining us now in studio. David, what do we know about Jabbar's history?
Yeah, we're learning so much more about Shamsuddin Jabbar. Yesterday, we were able to speak with Army veterans who served with Jabbar and knew him as a kind, intelligent, and talented IT specialist about 15 years ago. But now we're learning about his mounting personal and financial difficulties that may have just pushed him to the breaking point. Records from Texas and Georgia show Jabbar was divorced 3 times, in 2012, in 2016, and the last time in 2020. That last case was very contentious. Financial records from 2022 showed Jabbar with mounting debts, and his ex-wife alleged he committed fraud in payments to her and their child. The divorce wasn't settled until just a few months ago, with Jabbar telling his ex-wife's attorney he was facing foreclosure. And a year and a half ago, Jabbar moved into this compound in Houston in a tight-knit community of devout Muslims. This morning, a neighbor who did not want to be shown on camera talked to our sister station, KHOU.
When he comes in, he was Muslim. As a Muslim, I didn't know what happened to him before. I didn't know anything before, what his background was. I was in the military. I learned anything, just everybody else learning as well. Now I know he was a nice, quiet neighbor. No one bothered. I know my kids are a handful. They sometimes scream, but he won't be bothered.
The FBI Deputy Assistant Director Christopher Reyes says that sometime before this summer, Jabbar started professing allegiance to the Islamic State terror group ISIS. Reyes said at a press conference this morning that Jabbar posted videos on social media this week saying he wanted to kill his family, but that wouldn't create enough headlines about the, quote, war between the believers and disbelievers. So he rented the white pickup truck, drove from Houston to New Orleans on Wednesday, rented the Airbnb on Mandeville Street, set up the coolers with the pipe bombs in the French Quarter, and gunned the truck down Bourbon Street. And for now, the FBI believes he was acting alone. Katie?
All right, much more to come. Thanks so much, David. And right now, we do know the names of 9 out of the 14 people who tragically lost their lives while celebrating the new year. 18-year-old Nakaira Cheyenne Dido from Gulfport. She was visiting with her cousin and her friend. St. Thomas More alum and Princeton football star Martin Tiger Besh. And Nicole Perez, who was a mother from Metairie.
Reggie Hunter, who was told, or we're told rather, was visiting New Orleans from Baton Rouge on a whim. 21-year-old Archbishop Shaw alum Hubert Gothrow and University of Alabama student Kareem Bawadi, who we do not have a picture of just yet. Auburn University alum Drew Dolphin, 25-year-old account executive Billy DeMaio, and Superdome audiovisual technician Matthew Tenedorio.
Whitney Miller spoke with Tenedorio's mother earlier today. She's remembering him for his, quote, laid-back spirit and infectious laughter.
Whitney, we know that conversation was difficult.
Yeah, it was really difficult. Matthew Tenedorio was out celebrating the new year with friends on Bourbon Street when he got separated from his friends that he was with. He worked as an audiovisual tech at the Superdome, and his mother tells me everywhere that he went, he did not know a stranger. Matthew was the youngest of 3 and a graduate of Pearl River Central. His mother says thankfully he spent most of New Year's Eve with his family in Slidell.
It was just a very fun time, relaxing, loving, and then at around 9:30, you know, we're going to head off. We're going to head into New Orleans. So we just all hugged each other and gave each other, a big love you, Happy New Year. Talk to you tomorrow. Please text me when you get home, kind of stuff. My husband tried to tell him, please, just son, don't go and stay here. Don't, no, Dad. So anyway, that was that. And then we didn't hear from him.
Yeah, she went on to tell me that trying to figure out where he was and what happened to him was a complete nightmare. Tonight at 10, she'll share more about her son and this whole experience.
Whitney, thank you so much. I know that was a heartbreaking conversation. And earlier today, local leaders walked down Bourbon Street and held a vigil to honor those victims. NOPD Chief Ann Kirkpatrick, Mayor Cantrell, local ministers, and Archbishop Gregory Amond held a second line and placed 14 yellow roses for each of those killed.
A short time after that vigil, the street was cleaned and cleared and reopened.
It was a very active crime scene yesterday, but now people are back in the bars and restaurants there. Amelia Strahan joining us with more. Amelia, how does it look tonight?
Katie and Charisse, for the first time since that attack, it's starting to sound a little more like normal on Bourbon Street. I'm sure you can hear the music playing. The crowds are returning. Really, since they opened that street at 2 o'clock, the crowds did not hesitate to come back. I'm going to step out of the way so you guys can get a quick look at Bourbon Street. Now, this is a little closer to Canal. If you go further down, the crowds are a lot more dense, and we're expecting them to get even denser as the night goes on and the Sugar Bowl crowds make their way down to Bourbon Street. You can probably see the flashing lights. That is still just one little shot of the heavy police presence that's still down here on Bourbon Street. But I mean, as soon as they opened it up today, the people immediately started walking down, and I think it is because of that law enforcement presence. It made people feel safer. But since that attack early New Year's Day, investigators have been the only people allowed on Bourbon Street. So it is encouraging to see it starting, to look a little more like normal. And of course, there are mixed emotions about this reopening. This comes just after the attack. So the people that are, working at these businesses, they are still, experiencing a little bit of fear from what we're hearing from them. We saw employees holding hands, praying, happening. I know you showed video just a few moments ago of that vigil. So still, while sounding joyful and sounding a little more back to normal, still a very difficult day for many people down here. We actually spoke to Sheriff Susan Hudson just before they opened Bourbon Street today, and she described a difficult few days for her staff, but says she and other law enforcement agencies are ready to keep New Orleans safe.
People said veterans who've been here for years are like, I've never seen anything like that. Community, it's about our visitors, it's about us. And so we feel good about the plan in place. You can see all the personnel here. We've got federal, state, local law enforcement here, our first responders from EMS and fire, just tremendous efforts.
And of course, we're so grateful to our law enforcement out here doing a very important job during a very difficult time. We're going to keep you updated as we stay out here on Bourbon Street this evening. We'll see you guys back here at 6:30. Reporting live from Bourbon Street, Amelia Strahan, WWL, Louisiana.
Begin with the breaking news on the deadly truck ramming attack in New Orleans. New information is now emerging about the driver, as authorities now believe he acted alone. CNN's Omar Jimenez is joining us live from New Orleans right now, where Bourbon Street just reopened. Omar, what are you seeing there, and what are you hearing from investigators?
Yeah, Wolf. Well, for starters, yes, Bourbon Street is now reopened for the first time since this deadly attack took place. You can sort of see the scene. It's less crowded than maybe it typically would be. Over there in Canal Street, down behind us, you see there are actually major barriers blocking the entrance. It's open to pedestrians, but it is still closed to vehicles. That said, there is still a major security presence here, as you see some of these police vehicles being let in. You also might notice some of those yellow barriers on the sidewalks as well. That is new. We saw those being installed over the course of today. And for those that have seen the surveillance video of this truck coming through, it did initially go over part of the sidewalk, and then of course it would have come down this direction onto the street over toward this area as well. Again, all of it now reopened to pedestrians for the first time. And on the investigatory side, you were talking about some of it before you were coming to me. The FBI today saying, as opposed to yesterday, that they believe this driver acted alone. Remember, yesterday they believed he wasn't solely responsible for this. They said this new conclusion comes as a result of actually going through interviews, going through phone and laptop records, where they also uncovered that they believe this is 100% ISIS motivated. Another big aspect of this too, there was a major football game going on. It was delayed to today. That is also underway. We were over there earlier talking to some fans, and they were nervous. Some of them were out that very night when this happened in the early morning hours, but they are all at the game with also an increased security presence as well. There was music coming through earlier, and a little bit closer to the entrance of this, there are flowers laid out, 14 of them for the 14 killed in this attack, Wolf. But as you can see, Bourbon Street is now back reopened, and although it may not be as crowded as it might typically be at this time of night, it'll be curious to see if that changes as the night goes on, Wolf.
All right, we shall see. Omar Jimenez on the ground for us in New Orleans. Thank you very much. There are also some new questions tonight if potential warning signs were missed after CNN reviewed internal government documents warning law enforcement just last month of potential violence from lone offenders around the holidays and the potential use of vehicles as deadly weapons. Here now is CNN's Brian Todd. Brian, what can you tell us about these warnings?
Wolf, at the moment, these warnings seem to have been very far-sighted and on the mark, but national security experts tell us the reality is that some of these attacks are extremely hard to prevent.
As law enforcement officials scramble to determine the motive of the New Orleans suspect, new information tonight on recent warnings that these very same types of attacks could occur. According to two internal memos obtained by CNN, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI issued a joint bulletin to law enforcement agencies on December 6th, warning about threats from lone wolf offenders and the possibility of vehicle rammings. The bulletin warns that lone wolves could hit, quote, soft targets in the homeland during winter holidays, and that those offenders have historically used simple tactics such as edged weapons, firearms, or vehicle ramming.
The big picture on this attack is that this has actually been a long time coming, and now we're at a point where the American public are waking up.
Indeed, back in 2010, Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen published an article calling vehicles the ultimate mowing machine, promoting the use of four-wheel drive pickup trucks because, quote, the stronger the better, and encouraging attackers to pick up as much speed as possible while maintaining control, and, quote, be able to strike as many people as possible in your first run. Analysts say it's their simplicity and subtlety that have made vehicles attractive weapons for terrorists.
You don't need any special preparation. Buying a gun might attract attention. Certainly making bombs is something that might attract attention, might also suggest some degree of training, who knows.
Following that December 6th bulletin, and after the December 20th vehicle attack on a Christmas market in Germany that killed at least 5 people and injured more than 200, the Department of Homeland Security sent another warning to law enforcement, reiterating that mass gatherings were potential targets, and that vehicle ramming had been used in the U.S. as a tactic before. One of those bulletins referred to the attack on a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin in November 2021, when a suspect driving an SUV killed 6 people and injured more than 60. Still, analyst Beth Sanner says there's only so much law enforcement can do to prevent vehicle attacks.
You can do things around big events like blocking off entrances to the venues using dump trucks, other large vehicles, but you can't close off everything. And it is incredibly expensive to really shut down events. And you have things like parades where people are moving down streets.
Beth Sanner says none of this should discourage anyone from going to large outdoor gatherings, but she says there are some things that citizens can do to protect themselves at these events. Pay attention to where the barriers are and where there could be spaces that vehicles could get through those barriers. Don't stand near the edges of entryways, and don't constantly look at your phone. Wolf.
Good advice indeed. All right, Brian Todd reporting for us. Brian, thank you very, very much. Brian is always there for us on the scene. Coming up in our next hour, by the way, I'll speak with the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. He's going to be standing by live. For more insight into the investigation, we're joined now by the Louisiana Attorney General, Liz Murrill. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us on this very, very busy day for you. It's been roughly, as you know, about 36 hours since the attack. Bourbon Street is reopened. The Sugar Bowl is underway. Are you confident New Orleans is now secure and safe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just returned from New Orleans, and there is an enormous police presence in New Orleans. I feel very confident that the city is incredibly secure. And, it's just been a tough 36 hours.
Very tough indeed. No way to start a new year. CNN Attorney General has obtained some exclusive video from a doorbell camera showing the suspect outside of his rental home just a few hours before the attack. How important will bystander video and photos, for that matter, be for this overall investigation?
It's been very important, and I know that the FBI is still asking for all kinds of tips and footage and any information on any interaction that anybody had with this individual so that it can help them create a more complete picture of all of his movements. And, you know, even before that, long before that, they want to put a better picture together of who this person was and how he came to be so radicalized and so hate-filled that he mowed down 40 people on Bourbon Street yesterday morning.
Horrible situation. CNN Attorney General has obtained memos from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI warning law enforcement just last month about potential lone actors using vehicles as weapons. What more do you think could have been done to prevent an attack like this one?
You know, this is a known risk. I mean, I think that everybody has been preparing this. We knew, I think all law enforcement has known that lone actors, lone kind of wolf actors could be a threat, but long before a month ago. So that's not breaking news, I think, to law enforcement. Certainly, we've expected potential for things like that to happen in New Orleans because there are parades all of the time during Mardi Gras. And, you know, so you're all constantly dealing with traffic, not necessarily people who are angry and want to kill other people, but you always have the risk of drunk drivers and things like that. So I think there's just always been some effort to protect against that in New Orleans. And there was a vehicle placed at the front of Bourbon Street. It did not cover the entirety of the area, so the sidewalk was still open.
And that was so horrible indeed. Did you or anyone in your office receive any sort of credible threat information about some kind of attack around the New Year's holiday?
No one has reported receiving any kind of threat that would have led anybody to believe that there was anything other than the kind of trying to prepare and avoid the possibility of some kind of act, but nobody had any information of any kind of threat.
We know dozens were injured in this brutal attack, and you said yesterday, Attorney General, that some were now still fighting for their lives. What can you tell us about how they are doing right now?
Well, I know that there are over 20 people still in the hospital. I think 23 is the count that I saw last. 10 of those people are still in critical condition. And we've lost a significant number of lives. I think this morning they confirmed 15 counting the truck driver, but 14 people because of his actions. And we've got 10 people still in critical condition. So, I mean, it was a terrible, terrible loss. Terrible.
One final question, Attorney General, before I let you go. The Super Bowl is scheduled to be in New Orleans early next month. Are you guys ready for it? Are the fans, the 80,000 or whatever number of fans who are planning on attending, are they going to be safe?
They are going to be safe. I'm confident that they're going to be safe and that we're going to have a great game and a great time in the city of New Orleans for the Super Bowl. You know, I know that everyone, including me, are doubling down our efforts to reevaluate every possible weak point in our city. The Super Bowl committee will be part of that. The federal government will be part of that, and state and local officials will be part of that. So I'm confident that we are going to look at this again with fresh eyes after this incident, and we will have a safe Super Bowl.
Breaking news, the family of Shamsuddin Jabbar speaking out for the first time, telling CNN that the man that they knew is completely different from the man who drove a pickup truck into a crowd, purposely killing 14, trying to kill countless more. His brother, just moments ago, telling CNN, quote, he was very well-tempered, slow to anger, kind, soft-spoken. That's why it was so unbelievable that he would be capable of something like this. Something screwed him up. He's not this type of person. Someone or something fogged his mind. His brother says that he never had any conversation with him about ISIS. Ed Lavendera is out front tonight in Houston, and that is where Jabbar lived.
Investigators continue trying to unravel the mystery of how 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar became a radicalized ISIS sympathizer. The Texas-born U.S. Army veteran served in Afghanistan and lived in Houston. Before he was killed in a shootout with police, the FBI says Jabbar had proclaimed his support for ISIS in a series of videos posted online.
There were 5 videos
posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends.
A childhood friend who had kept in touch with Jabbar on Facebook said he was called Sham in high school and had since become very religious.
Pretty much every conversation we had or post that he was making at that time, in some way, shape, or form, it all, resorted back to his Muslim faith.
An Army spokesperson says Jabbar served in the Army and Army Reserve for more than a decade, part of that time as an information technology specialist. Sean Keenan was a student journalist in 2015 when Jabbar attended Georgia State University. He interviewed Jabbar about the struggles of returning to civilian life after the military.
I remember a very calm, collected guy. Certainly no red flags. He did come across as a leader and a helper. And exactly what went wrong after that remains mysterious to me.
This is the home in North Houston where Shamsuddin Jabbar lived. A neighbor tells us that he was here for just about a year and a half. The aftermath of how investigators knocked down the door and fence to access Jabbar's house was visible from the neighbor's yard. A neighbor tells us that he last saw Jabbar on New Year's Eve morning. He was out front loading up a white truck. Jabbar told him that he had found a new job in Louisiana and he was moving there.
The morning he was moving, I asked him if he needs hands for moving, help him out as a neighbor. Do you need any help for moving things around? He said, I'm okay.
Mumtaz Bashir lived next door to Jabbar, and he said they only spoke briefly on Tuesday morning while Jabbar was loading what he described as light items into a white pickup truck. He asked Jabbar about his new job.
He said the same thing what he was doing related to the same thing. I think what he mentioned was it was in IT.
Bashir says he only saw the truck there one night and was stunned to learn Jabbar drove a white truck in the terror attack on New Year's Day.
We still don't believe it, that's the person. We just, no way. Can't be like that.
And Aaron, the FBI has released several new pictures tonight of Jabbar, taken about an hour and 15 minutes before the attack there in the French Quarter. Jabbar is walking around. They're urging the public to look at those photos if they saw someone like him walking around the French Quarter to reach out to them. They also released a picture of a cooler that contained an IED device. Investigators want to hear from people who might have witnessed any of this. And really, the staggering news tonight is the news from Jabbar's brother and father, who tell CNN that they never saw any indication that Jabbar had become radicalized in recent months or years, and that he had become an ISIS sympathizer. Aaron?
All right, thank you very much.
I want to get some more on these breaking stories right now. Joining us, the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us. I know you have a lot going on. We really appreciate it. So this investigation and what happened in New Orleans is now in its second day. Where do things go from here? What do you still need to know?
Well, the FBI is leading the investigation, Wolf. As you know, of course, 14 innocent lives were lost in that tragic event, and our hearts break for the families and loved ones. And we pray for those who suffered injuries for their swift recovery.
We do have National Security Analyst Hal Kemper. He's standing by as well. And Hal, ultimately, what we talk about during these situations, especially in the early moments of the investigation, was something.
You are looking live at a newly reopened Bourbon Street in New Orleans and the Las Vegas Strip as the cities recover. New today, we're learning more about both suspects in the New Year's Day incidents and their connections to North Carolina. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Deborah Morgan.
And I'm Gerald Owens. Here's the newest information we have tonight out of New Orleans. One of the victims on Bourbon Street was 25-year-old Matthew Tenedorio. His family says they begged him not to go out New Year's Eve. The FBI says the New Orleans attacker was 100% inspired by ISIS. President Biden says the suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar, also had a remote detonator in his truck to set off explosives hidden in coolers.
We also know both men connected to the attack served at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty. We have team coverage tonight. WRL's Sean Gallagher starts off with some specifics on their connections to North Carolina. Sean?
Yeah, Deborah, both of those men served in the Army and spent time here at Fort Liberty. Quite possibly just a coincidence, but far from the only thing the two men shared in common. So we know Shamsuddin Jabbar and Matthew Livelsberger served in the Army, and both were stationed here at Fort Liberty. But law enforcement said there's no record they were in the same unit and that they did not overlap. But they both did serve in Afghanistan in 2009. Again, with no indication they were in the same unit, same location, or even in the same province. Now come the similarities in what happened. Both men used the car rental company Turo to rent their vehicles with attacks on New Year's Day. And both vehicles were electric, a Ford F-150 Lightning in New Orleans and a Tesla Cybertruck in Las Vegas.
If these turned out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have. And so we're not prepared to rule in or rule out anything at this point.
Despite not having a motive yet in Las Vegas, investigators are not naive to what they're seeing in this case as it relates to Elon Musk and President-elect Donald Trump.
We know we have a bombing, absolutely, and it's a bombing that certainly has factors that raise concern. It's not lost on us that it's in front of, of the Trump building, that it's a Tesla vehicle, but we don't have information at this point that definitively tells us or suggests it was because of this particular ideology or any of the reasoning behind it.
If there are any differences, it could be in the two men's level of service. Livelsberger was a Green Beret, serving nearly 20 years, but investigators say his plan didn't match up.
The level of sophistication is not what we would expect from an individual with this type of military experience. The components primarily consist of fireworks, mortars, aerial shells, and are all consumer fireworks.
And law enforcement noted the Cybertruck's structural stability likely made the blast go up rather than out, probably preventing more injuries from happening. Now, as far as a motive is concerned, the FBI is still waiting to get access to Livelsberger's phone and his laptop, which could reveal more information about why he did this in the first place. In Fayetteville, Sean Gallagher, WRAL News.
As Sean mentioned, both men served in the military. Researchers have noticed that military members' ties to extremism is a growing trend. WRAL Investigates Sarah Kruger is live at Duke University. Sarah, you talked with counterterrorism experts. What did they say about this?
Gerald, one of those professors I talked to was here at Duke, the other at UNC, and they both want to stress that we're talking about a very small number of people here and a small number of acts. They offered some possible explanations.
An explosion in Las Vegas and an attack in New Orleans, both perpetrated, officials say, by men with ties to the military. UNC professor Navin Bobbitt says it's part of a growing trend.
It does fit with an empirical pattern that we're seeing since the late 2010s, that we're seeing increasing military participation in some of these groups. Again, it's not huge. It's not like it's an enormous amount of, we're all veterans that are coming home doing this, but we are seeing more of it.
Locally and around the country, academics are exploring why. This report out of Maryland found that criminal extremism with a nexus to the United States military is a limited but possibly growing problem that is primarily centered in the veteran community.
Individuals in the military, they join the military because they want to be part of a cause that is bigger than themselves. Well, that's exactly what the terrorists appeal to in these ideologies.
David Schanzer is a professor at Duke and leads the Triangle Center on Terrorism and Homeland Security.
It is possible that people are, maybe more who have that mindset, who came to the military, are maybe ultimately more vulnerable to these kinds of ideas if they become disenchanted with kind of the ethos of the military. Certainly, of our million plus members of the United States Armed Forces, it's very rare for any one individual to be involved in this kind of activity.
In New Orleans,
it's a somber mood, but yet we're a resilient city.
Lifelong resident Tommy Boudreau, who worked for years doing restoration at police crime scenes, says they'll come back stronger.
My hope and prayers is that people will still continue to trust the overall security and safety of our city and don't power down to this idiot who chose to be radical.
The Super Bowl and Mardi Gras are just weeks away in New Orleans. Officials there say they will be ramping up security for those events. Sarah Kruger, WRAL News, live in Durham.
Is there a connection? The two men who carried out the New Year's Day attacks share several striking similarities. Both are Army vets reportedly deployed to the same Army base, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, now known as Fort Liberty. Both chose to act on New Year's Day within hours of each other. Both drove electric trucks, and they rented them from the same car rental app, Turo.
There are so many things that are crisscrossing. These are coincidences that really should cause pause.
If these turned out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have.
But today, the FBI says they have yet to find a connection.
At this point, there is no definitive link.
The surprise attacks came after a night of joyous national celebrations welcoming in the new year. Cops have named the Vegas suspect as Matthew Livelsberger, a 37-year-old Green Beret on leave from active duty in Germany. We found this video of Livelsberger and his ex-wife Sarah, a social worker, waiting at an airport for a red-eye flight to New York in 2016.
On our way.
Police say Livelsberger drove 12 hours through the night from his home in Colorado Springs to Las Vegas, stopping twice to recharge the truck's battery. The interior of the Tesla Cybertruck is like no other vehicle on the road. You are surrounded by glass, and the steering wheel is rectangular shaped. The monitor here controls everything with a touch screen, and it's pretty comfortable and easy to drive. Cops say that the suspect drove around Vegas for an hour before pulling up outside the Trump International Hotel. New surveillance video released today shows the suspect arriving in Las Vegas and driving up to the hotel. He was parked for just 17 seconds before cops say he detonated the homemade bomb in the trunk. It was made from gas canisters and large fireworks. This is where the explosives were stored in the bed of the truck, and because it's built like a tank, the explosion was contained, directing the blast upwards. Remarkably, the explosion did little damage to the glass lobby of the Trump Hotel. The Cybertruck itself was engulfed in flames, but was left pretty much intact. Tesla boss Elon Musk proudly boasted. The evil knuckleheads picked the wrong vehicle for a terrorist attack. So why did he use a Cybertruck? The answer seems obvious.
The idea of getting the Elon Musk signature car and bringing it to the gold Trump sign in Las Vegas, it really suggests he's trying to send a message.
President-elect Trump is reacting to the targeting of his Vegas hotel today. The USA is breaking down. A violent erosion of safety, national security, and democracy is taking place.